Hey, good evening, Pool Player Nation. Welcome to the APA studio here in St. Louis. I'm Jason Bowman, and tonight we are talking Jeanette Lee versus the 30 for 30 film, which just debuted on ESPN. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We had a chance to sit down here in the studio, watch it. Obviously, a lot of folks out there right now feeling the emotions, right? It got you in the feels. It's gotten us in the feels a little bit. So we wanted to be able to share, right, and to sit down with you guys, talk back and forth. So what we would encourage you guys to do tonight is post your comments here in this live stream. We want to hear from you guys, want to hear what you thought. We're going to be talking a lot about the film tonight. There's a lot there to unpack, I think, a lot of layers to peel back, right? And so we're going to do all that tonight. We've got some guests that are going to be joining us. We have 5 remote guests, the last of which will be Jeanette Lee. The Black Widow will join us, give us her thoughts on the film. And that kind of thing. And then we've got some other guests that were involved in the production of the film, some that appeared in the film. And so should be an interesting evening, and we are excited. Again, I know you guys are probably feeling very emotional. Might be a little emotional for us. We have some clips from the film that we're going to be showing once again as we kind of talk through everything that we saw tonight. So, you know, if we get a little emotional, that's all right. If you get a little emotional, that's all right. I think it's to be expected, and I think we're off and running. So, guys, really kind of a coup for the billiard world, this piece, ESPN 30 for 30 on Jeanette Lee. Of course, we've been anticipating it for several weeks. Very excited about it. Now it's out there for the world to see, just under an hour. Again, we're going to kind of peel back things as they go, but just kind of hot takes, first thoughts after seeing the film. Let's start with Becky.
Yeah, I think it was excellent. You know, having known Jeanette on a personal level, I got to learn some things about her that I didn't know before. You know, I knew that she had been through struggles in her life, but to see it all, and especially like the stuff when she was younger that I had no idea that she went through. And I think it was really good to see a more vulnerable side of Jeanette. You know, we always see her as just being this sort of performer that's out there, and kind of seeing her on another side, a more emotional level. I think one of her daughters actually made the comment, you know, she's human too, you know, she has feelings as well, even though you don't always see that, but she is, you know, a person just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned all of our panel guests. We've got Tracy, Bill, and Becky here, all of them with personal relationships with Jeanette. Each of us has known her for at least a decade or more in kind of different capacities based on our business with the APA. So like Becky said, we do have some kind of familiarity with her, and there's a lot of things, I think, in seeing the film that maybe we didn't know or understand.
I always thought of her as a badass. You know what I mean? I totally agree with what Becky said. The vulnerable side came out in that tonight, for sure. I really was surprised at how the ladies treated her from the WPBA. I was surprised at that. It kind of hurt my feelings. But yeah, it was a lot of the things I think all of us knew. I don't know that we really put them all together in our heads, though, and this really did that for me.
Yeah, and we're going to have one of our guests tonight, Mike Panozzo, who is the publisher of Billiards Digest, is going to be here. And one of the reasons we're bringing him on the show, not only was he in the film, but we want to talk to him a little bit about those years where there was some conflict and maybe if there was ever a resolution, because I'm not sure that came across in the film. So that's, again, a lot of layers, a lot of things to peel back, and that is definitely on the agenda for this evening. So, again, if that was something you guys noticed, we certainly want to hear that. Bill, I mean, you've seen a lot of these 30 for 30s. It's as big of a tearjerker as I've seen.
I think so, and I think that it absolutely has to do with the emotional component of it, knowing Jeanette, knowing her personally, and having the ability to see behind the scenes as we do, because we are in the industry. That's how we met Jeanette. But this film really peeled back those layers too, and you did see a vulnerability that Jeanette will not show in public. She will not show it. And you could even see within the film that even when they were filming, she was, you know, still Jeanette, still fighting to put on a brave face through some of the toughest things anybody could ever go through. I thought that was really powerful. But it also peeled back layers on an era of pool when we weren't in the industry. We weren't there, and it did shine a light on some of the things that happened prior to our arrival on the scene and what pool is today, and to kind of see that back then and see what a force she was and how different she was, and how that was treated at the time was something really, really important to see. And I think it's something, I mean, it's the reason why there's a 30 for 30 on Jeanette, right?
Yeah.
Because within the pool world, she's unique, she's a force unto herself, and it just shows all the way through. So I thought it was very well done. Seems tough to condense somebody's life into 50 60 minutes, 50 minutes. Yeah. But I think it was very well done, and I think it really did show the different facets of what it is to be Jeanette, which isn't necessarily just the public persona.
It's interesting that you guys all mentioned vulnerability, right? I mean, that came out of all your mouths. So I'm curious if the viewers felt the same thing. And I do think, once you get to know Jeanette, and she kind of said this in the film, like, I'm such a nice person. Why would you call me Black Widow? Jeanette is one of the most approachable, like, celebrities I think you'll ever meet, But it's not until you interact with her on that level that you realize, because if you're just seeing her on screen, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers have only seen her on screen, you do get a different vibe until you get to know her. So I'm happy that the film came out and really kind of showed that side as well. So no doubt about it. No doubt about it. It was interesting when I found out about the film and the title came out, Jeanette Lee versus. And I thought, I don't know, it's kind of a weird title, right? But one, it didn't have the Black Widow, right? Everybody knows the Black Widow. But I think now, having seen the film, obviously, it's much a bigger story about a person and their journey, and obviously the Black Widow is a big part of it, but it's not the whole part, so makes a lot more sense. And then the verses is, you pretty quickly, when you dive into the film, you start realizing Jeanette has had a lot of battles.
Lots.
A lot of battles. And so Jeanette Lee versus is showing you, here are some of her biggest battles. And I will say her biggest battles are bigger than most, right?
Absolutely.
And they're often
Without a
not on the
doubt.
pool table, right? I mean, the vast majority of them aren't. They seem to be what made her, or whatever's in her to take on those challenges seems to play into her game, but it's just a part of that competitiveness that she has and that drive she has in everything. And the pool part and what was happening there seemed to be, I mean, not a footnote, it's why,
She
it's why
even
the focus
said
is
it.
on this, but
Yeah.
there is so much more.
Yeah, she even said that the challenges are what drive her, for sure.
So again, guys, comment below. Let us know what you guys are thinking. Did you feel like you liked seeing a more vulnerable side of Jeanette? What did you think of the title? All these things we're discussing. We certainly want to hear what you think as well, right? Because this is kind of a community program, this after show, a way for us to have kind of an outlet for our feelings about it. So let's dive in. Let's get into the film a little bit. It opens up, quick intro. Gives you some context to who Jeanette is, right? Again, it's ESPN, so there's a lot of viewers outside the pool community. So you get this introduction to Jeanette, but then we're in Brooklyn, and she's looking back on childhood, 5 years old. 5 years old, and she starts to experience really what I would say is kind of her first battle, at least the first battle we learn about, and that is racism back in Brooklyn. I don't know what you guys thought of that. I mean, it was kind of interesting because a lot of times I think when you hear the term racism, I mean, you think about, generally a white majority against some other minority group, where in this case it was a minority group that was giving another minority group a hard time. And it was, just kind of thought-provoking and just, I know right now there's a lot of, you've seen in the news, especially since COVID, a lot of backlash against the Asian community. And we're going to talk with some folks from the Asian Hall of Fame tonight, because obviously the film touched on Jeanette's importance to them, but it was just interesting to hear that at 5 years old, Brooklyn, New York, she's encountering racism.
That's one thing I would have never thought of. That was one of the things that I didn't know about and would have never guessed had happened to her,
It was interesting too that her sister and her kind of had two different takes on it.
Definitely
It seemed
different
like,
perspectives.
Yeah, Jeanette seemed to have, seemed like it got to her a little bit more, and her sister kind of acted like it didn't really affect her. So I don't know if there was an age gap there, or how it affected them differently.
Just different experience. Everybody experiences things differently, and I'm sure they weren't always in the same class or the same circumstance, and maybe Jeanette just felt a little more deeply. And it also could have been framed by the other things that we learn about that are happening to her at such a young age. Father is out the door at 5 years old, right? She has some memories, very few memories of dad at home, right? So the male figure leaves, which leaves single mom to have to provide for her family, right? Single immigrant mother from Korea that's got to provide for the family, and she does that as a nurse. And you know, if you know nurses, they work a lot of hours.
All the time, yeah.
Yep.
Well, and didn't she say her stepfather he owned a cigarette store or something in Manhattan, so he was gone all the time
Right.
as well, so.
Yeah. So, and then to kind of top it off in this young period, at 12 years old now, she gets the scoliosis diagnosis, right? And you hear her in the film basically say, I felt like that destroyed me because of not only the physical pain that she had to undergo to fix that, but just the way it changed her body. You know, she talks a
Yeah.
lot about the brace.
Affects your self-esteem. It really does. I mean, think about movies that we've watched and joke characters that are made wearing back braces. And I mean, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a girl with like a headgear and a back brace.
Yeah.
And so I could totally see where it would affect your self-esteem if you had to wear something like that.
I mean, I have an 11-year-old daughter, and, you know, she said she had that happen around 12 years old, and I know the struggles that she deals with at that age, and I can't imagine, you know, putting that on top of already being an 11, 12-year-old girl at that time. I'm sure that was extremely, extremely hard for her.
Right.
I think
So-
that's a good point too. It's hard enough to be a kid,
Right.
right? And in all those scenarios, it's the differences, right, between her and others that are pointed out. And the scoliosis, I mean, that definitely is a different thing, and something. Kids are cruel, right? And if you already experienced some of that growing up, now that's just one more thing on top of it. But it's really interesting what she does with it. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if she was already being bullied for being Korean in a predominantly African American community, now she has this physical thing she has
Right.
to wear and try to cover up that, like you said, kids are mean. I
Kids
got
are
a couple
brutal.
of kids, and you know, it's just it's sad, and I don't know that kids do it intentionally, but they are mean, and you can tell, you know, at such a young age, 12 years into her journey, and she's already encountered 3 pretty traumatic for any kid circumstances in the racism, dad leaving, and now this physical thing. And in fact, I think we've got a clip from the show we're going to show you real quick so we can give everybody a frame of reference. We can look back real quickly and just kind of see what she was thinking at that time in her life.
Oh, there is me, right when I had the surgery. For my scoliosis, I have a brace on, a big brace.
When it was discovered that I had scoliosis, I think I was 12, I was in middle school. All they told me was, your spine is crooked like an S, and all we're gonna do is make it straight. And I'm like, okay.
What they had to do is implant 2 18-inch Harrington rods. I remember just waking up in agony.
Can't talk, can't ask for anything, you're just, But inside, you're feeling all of it. There was so much pain. I mean, they ripped my spine apart. They literally broke the spine.
And I have the big plastic brace on that you had to add on with the Velcro straps. I would wear a lot of shirts with this jacket vest over it to try to hide the brace. This was really like, I was a head case.
All right, so I mean, again, you kind of see her looking back on that and how difficult of a time it is in her life, and it kind of sets her on a new path, right? Like, she feels like an outcast, and it kind of sets her into these teen years where
She was a rebellious little.
she becomes kind of a
Yeah.
darker rebel, you know, the darker teenager.
Right.
I mean, you know, am I right?
You're absolutely right. I mean, what'd she say? She smoked weed, did acid, staying out.
Started going to the pool. Obviously, that's what transitioned to her starting to
Right.
go to the pool halls and stuff all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, mom's
Mom
not
brought
crazy
up-
about it.
Yeah, Mom
right?
brought up that she was very unhappy. I mean, just again to have those things happen and then to have that pain on top of it. I mean, we saw the scar, right?
Yeah.
That's very painful, right? And then to go through that, to be in a bad way isn't out of the norm if you're going through that. But yeah, the moving on and the finding a community, and I think it's best when Jeanette kind of says it, and it might be saying it a little soon, but the sport she picked with her back the way it is definitely not something that most of her doctors probably would have recommended, I guess. And something that I would have to assume she was dealing with the pain the entire time from that too.
Yeah, I feel like this is the point in the film where some of the magic starts to happen, right? Because she's this outcast, and there's this big boom going on in the pool world, right? The color of money
Right.
years that we've all heard about long before most of our time in the pool world.
Right.
But the color of money boom, you hear him talk about it in the film, pool rooms start opening. And Jeanette happens into this subculture of pool, and I think she finds there what we know even today about pool is it's very inclusive, right? Anybody can go and play pool with anybody else. Like, doesn't matter where you're from. And that part to me was fascinating because I'm not sure that had she not experienced these really negative things that led her on this darker path and eventually into the pool community that the magic really happens. And so there are certain elements at work there that are kind of spinning this into something special.
She even says that she feels like everything's happening to her for a reason, right, along
Yeah.
the way. So,
But I think in a pool hall, you're going to meet all kinds of different people who come from all different backgrounds, and a lot of whom have gone through their own struggles, right? And really finding that community within there. Once you're kind of ingratiated in, you're in if you want to be there. And it sounds like she really embraced that environment and ran with it.
I feel like everybody had nicknames.
They did all have nicknames,
I
right?
had a
did.
nickname.
Yeah. Well, and she says she was mesmerized, right?
Right.
And I don't know that this came across in the film, but I feel like having talked to her over the years, like she's always kind of liked the geometry of the sport, if I remember correctly. So, you know, she's mesmerized by some of the characters she sees, what they're doing at the table. You know, again, we know a lot of times, sometimes people are inclined to favor pool if they are mathematically inclined, or especially with the geometry, right? Sometimes the physics. So she starts to fall in love with this sport. And what's the guy's name? Gene Nagy. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Gene Nagy, I don't know if he's still with us anymore or not, but what a great compliment to this gentleman that, you know, he basically becomes her mentor. And I
Takes
just,
her under his wing.
yeah, I just thought that was phenomenal because of all the places to find a great mentor in life, probably wouldn't look in the pool hall. Like,
Yeah.
No.
you know, it just doesn't seem like the most logical, but it's perfect for her. And again, this magic is growing, right? Like these circumstances and right place, right time, and all these things are culminating into something that turns out really crazy good. So it does sound like she starts doing a little bit of gambling, which at the time would not have been a huge
surprising.
thing, and probably one of the only places or ways you could get on a table in a place like that is if you were gambling.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, but it sounds like she starts to really sharpen her skills through playing for some money.
Well, she had to pay her table time, Jason.
Had to pay the table time. It is New York City. So we talked about Jean Nagy. She starts playing in tournaments. She starts realizing I'm pretty good at pool, and maybe there's something there, right? It's becoming more of an obsession. Mom is starting to really not like it. In fact, I think there was a part of the film where Mom, they talked about how she wasn't around early on because she was so tied up with work. But then she quits, I think she said, when Jeanette was about 16,
Yeah.
almost like she realized that she needed to be at home to try to get her daughter back on a different path. And it seems like she just kind of acknowledged that it was too late.
Well, she's staying out late. She's gambling.
She's
at the
getting
pool
rides with
hall.
boys.
She's
I mean,
still,
that's-
still
she
kind of on
was
that bad
young.
girl path, right? And Mom's, I can understand Mom not being too keen on that whole scene, But again, she had a knack for it, They took her in under her wing. She's growing as a player. As you get better, going to want to play more, right? The success breeds more success and kind of leads into the story as it goes from here.
Yeah, I'm sure mom's thinking, what are you going to do with pool? Like, you know, like, is this going to be
Wouldn't
a job?
your mom? I mean,
Yeah,
your mom would say the same thing, I think.
Absolutely. Like, what? You're going to make a job
I
out
think
of
it's
this?
right
Like,
up there on
where's
the
this
list of
going?
things, like if you go home and say, this is what I love to do, this is what I want to do, that your parents would be like, no, that's not a good way to make a living.
My
or
grandmother thinks
how you
we
should
all
be
work in
spending
a
your
bar.
time.
So if that gives you any idea, I'm sure she didn't get it, you know?
Yeah. So at this point in the film, I mean, Jeanette is all in on pool. She's kind of integrated herself into the New York billiard community, I think you could say. And this is the point where the nickname that would really change the face of Jeanette's career, change the face of pool, comes along. And I think we've got another clip here I want to show that just kind of talks about where that moniker came from.
The first ever $1 million pool room. The room owner, Gabe Figueredo, one night came to lock up. He was just standing there looking at me and said, you need a nickname because you're going to be a champion. I've got the nickname, the Black Widow. And I'm going, how do I remind you of a Black Widow? I'm super nice. And he said, remember that first day I saw you? You're smiling to your friends, you're grabbing your cue, chalking it up, doing whatever, and then boom, everything changed. In Black, wants to kill.
All right, so there it is. Gabe Figueredo. Was that the gentleman's name that came up with the Black Widow?
That is one thing I didn't know, is where her nickname came from.
Yeah.
So that
We
was
gotta hire
pretty
that guy in
cool
the
to.
marketing department.
Right. I mean, who could have thought that she would turn that into a global brand?
Right.
But and it's funny too, because I think she references. He says you're going to be a champion. He probably couldn't have imagined that she would become this kind of cultural icon, at least for the for our sport.
Well, it's noteworthy that Jeanette says after the first time she played, or the first time, right? That competitiveness was there, and that seems to be the drive, right? So, right from the very beginning, she goes from being nice Jeanette that everybody sees, we all see when we're out there, to being just this killer on the table
Right.
from day one.
So I think we have our first guest about ready to remote in, and our first guest tonight is going to be Tom George. Tom is Jeanette's longtime manager. He was actually a producer on the film. And Tom, there you are, buddy. It's good to see you. Good evening.
Great to be here. Having fun tonight.
Yeah, so I'm sure it's been a busy night for you. I know it's a busy night for Jeanette. It's been a busy the last couple weeks, right?
Yeah, we've been in New York the last couple of weeks doing PR.
Sure.
All half an hour ago we were doing PR.
Nice. So, Tom, I'm curious kind of how this project came about. I mean, how did all this come together? Because this is, for the pool community, this is a huge deal. For Jeanette, obviously, this is a huge deal as well. But I mean, a 30 for 30 film, these things just don't, generally drop in on you.
Well, no, that didn't drop in on us, that's for sure. There was a lot of effort to get it done. Starting in 2008, I might add. I've been with Jeanette since the 90s. And in 2008, John Skipper, who was the head of ESPN at the time, who became Jeanette's friend, decided he wanted to upgrade the programming on the network. And they came up with 30 for 30, which is 30 documentaries in their 30th years of network. That would have been 2009. And we got a Jeanette Lee documentary to the semifinals for the first segment of 30 for 30 in 2009. So it only took us, what would that be? That would be 13 years to get it done. And an opportunity arose about a year and a half ago, in conjunction with Phil DiPicciotto and the guys at Octagon. The head of ESPN's 30 for 30 was a guy named Connor Schell, Libby Geist. They're listed on the credits. They left ESPN with their own production, Virgin Pictures, with a contract to deliver a certain number of 30 for 30s back to the network. And there was that decent time we were able to jump in and get a Jeanette Lee documentary accomplished.
Well, better late than never then. Sometimes it takes a while for good things to happen.
Maybe it's not late. Maybe it's just on time.
Yeah, it was meant to be. So, Tom, you know, I'm curious. At some point, you had to sit down and pitch this project to Jeanette with everything she had going on. Curious if you were apprehensive at all about whether the timing was okay for her to jump into this, or you know, what were your thoughts when you were getting ready to call her and say, "Hey, I've got a project for you"?
Well, she was involved from the get-go, and my only concern was that she would say yes before I get to the end of the question. Because, no, look, one of the very fundamental things that we did back in the 90s with her marketing program and marketing plan was PR till you drop, and she was a willing player. And she understands the value of this and what it means. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a different take on it. They did some pieces in the film about her kids, but her kids never knew the Black Widow. The kids knew Mom, and they see the posters and the pinball machine and the trophies, but they never saw or heard or felt the whole Black Widow thing. And she thought that this might be a way to get them to understand who their mother was, and I think it did do that.
Oh, that's fantastic, and does not surprise me at all that Jeanette was very much yes from the get-go. In my experience working with her, the answer is almost always yes. She is one of the hardest workers in the industry and that I've ever been around. Tom, I'm curious, now that you've had a chance to see the film, what did you think? I mean, you've known the Jeanette Lee story. Now you've known the story told by words and pictures and debuted on ESPN. What did you think?
Well, first of all, what you have to understand is this is not Jeanette Lee's life that they did here. This is a slice of it. It's only an hour. And so I was very happy with it. I've now seen it 4 times. I've cried in different places each time. So I liked it. I thought that they did a good, balanced job of showing both the triumph and the agony of the two. And they told stories, and I've got stories. You guys watched the film. You saw her go through Brooklyn in the early part of the film, right?
Yes.
She looked a little feeble, didn't she? A little slow walking, it was a struggle for her, don't you think?
Yes.
It had nothing to do with her cancer. About 4 or 5 weeks before that shoot, she had a horrible accident inside a motorhome where she took a horrible fall, and they had to do emergency spinal stenosis surgery. But we were in the process of doing a documentary with the delivery date. So just a few weeks after she has an emergency spinal stenosis surgery, she's walking around Brooklyn taping. So yeah, I expect her to say yes, and she's always answered the bell. Every time she answers the bell, she can be almost half dead, and if it's something she's supposed to do and has to do, she gets up and does it, the whole Black Widow thing.
Yeah, so for what they did put in the film, Tom, I'm curious, were you a fan? Did you feel like it was an accurate depiction of what you know of that part of Jeanette's life? Was it a 2 thumbs up for Tom George?
I think, yeah, of course, 2 thumbs up. But no, I liked it. I think it did do a pretty balanced job of it. I loved the interviews with Allison Fisher. I thought that was awesome. And to bring that kind of stuff in, I thought was really very good. And you know, the cancer was part of it. You can say my back is fused, I got metal rods in it, but they showed the picture. Okay, that drives that home pretty well. And look, she's a great competitor. Always competes, and I think that came across in the film very well.
Tom, last question for you. What is it about Jeanette that, in your opinion, has made her so successful?
Okay, I'm going to do 2 because it's about the same thing. And you mentioned it. One of them is work ethic. Nobody works harder than the Black Widow. In our shop at Octagon, she was Jeanette Never Let You Down Lee. She went every time she was supposed to be someplace, she was there. She practiced. She worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. If she had to do an 11 o'clock p.m. radio phone in to some sports talk station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, she did it. So work ethic. But she has a focus. Look, I've been around on a lot of athletes. I've represented, Octagon's a major sports marketing agency, the largest in the world now, and we represented many of the best athletes, names that you would know. And they all have focus. but Jeanette has a focus that I think is ungodly. She can tell you when she walked into that Howard Beach Billiard Club for the first time. She walked in the back room. She can tell you what the guy in the back left-hand corner is wearing. She can tell you that now. So her focus is unbelievable. She tells the story about how she went to do the perfect stroke and how she studied it. The focus was otherworldly.
Excellent. Well, Tom, I just want to thank you for, obviously your help in getting the 30 for 30 film done. I think it was a fantastic thing for not only Jeanette, the pool industry, all of her friends and family as well. And I know you had a big part in that, as well as helping us get this show, the after show, off the ground. You obviously played a big role in that too, and so we appreciate that. I'm going to let you run for now. I know we'll talk again in the days ahead, but we wish you the very best, and thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you guys doing this. It's a labor of love for me. Feels like it's a labor of love for you. Thanks, bud.
All right, Tom, take care. So again, that was Tom George, Jeanette's longtime manager and friend. Obviously, Tom did her Hall of Fame induction back in 2013. You actually see him in the film there. He had a very short appearance, but a very big part of her life, no doubt. And one of the things that he mentioned that I just wanted to kind of reiterate, because in my work with Jeanette, about 10 years ago, we did this Black Widow tour. And what that was is a number of exhibitions around the country where we would go into these big markets, Miami, Seattle, Chicago, New York, all over the country. And we would do shows for the public, free shows, and Jeanette would do her thing, and we'd bring in fans. And the idea was that we would reach the non-billiard community, get them to come out to see Jeanette. So one of the challenges with that is we didn't have a budget for any kind of advertising. All the budget was in the shows. And so that meant we had to be successful in pitching the local media, right? We had to get the local newspaper or radio or TV stations to do a story about her coming in so we could get the general public to show up. And we only had a small window to do these shows, right? We would come in the night before the show, we had the daytime, then the show was that night, we left the next day. And so that left like the morning, like early morning media spots. And so like I can remember early on in those shows, you might remember in Chicago, I think it was the first one, we were able to set up like some 6 a.m. kind of live spots downtown Chicago. We were staying out in the suburbs. And I remember being a little apprehensive about asking her because I knew like we'd have to leave at 5 a.m. and she'd have to be full Black Widow mode by 5:30 in the car, by 6 o'clock, ready to entertain whoever at the news station. And she's like, absolutely, let's do it. And every time I asked after that, and I always asked, but I became less apprehensive because every single time she was ready to go. And Jeanette's not a morning person, right? If you know Jeanette, she's not, no pool player really is. But I just thought it spoke to her work ethic, kind of like Tom said, that when there was an opportunity to promote herself, her brand, or to help whatever partner she was working with, she was going to step up and do it. And I know you guys have seen that.
Absolutely. Jeanette was coming to our junior championships, right? She's coming out there and just supporting. She becomes league operator, right? She's still coming. She's still Jeanette Lee. She still shows up. Everybody wants to meet Jeanette. She'd stay, talk with everybody, meet with everybody, just real personable. And we saw it time and time again, not just juniors. USAM, right? She's showing up at USAM. It's in her neck of the woods, but it's there. Jeanette makes an appearance. You talked about the tours, absolutely, those. I mean, some of those were pretty no frills, right? We're just out there, out in the market and just trying to provide an experience for people. She was the star that brought people in, and she was always on.
Yeah. Well, think back to her time in Vegas when she'd come out and spend basically the duration of the event, and she would be down doing exhibitions and challenge matches and instruction like 12 hours a day.
Oh, yeah.
In pain.
Pool parties.
I mean, she would just show up, and I mean, she would make some money from being out there, but most of that money went to the people that were working for her at the end of the day. And she was out there as a labor of love, and she's one of the hardest workers I've ever been around in my entire life, not just in pool, but just in general. And just in that respect, I got just a ton of respect for her.
She had to come to class early when she came to training.
Yeah, we had to come to...
I don't get to experience the same things you guys do at the events.
But she's been an APA league operator, which is a huge task, trying to be successful at that. in fact, she's still a partner as a league operator today, I believe.
Yep.
So, she's always had a lot of irons in the fire, no doubt. I want to have we heard from some viewers? I'm
Yeah, we
curious
do.
what people they've heard a lot about what we think, and we're going to keep running through. But let's hear what some of the folks back home tuning in thought of the
I'm going
film.
to scroll through some of these. Isaac Hayes, he says, a compelling, poignant look into the fans' favorite pool player. So much suffering, so much strength, so much love and dedication to her craft. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, ESPN. Season's greetings to you and your family.
Well, that was well said.
Yeah, very well said.
nice.
I thought that one was. Raymond Linares, he says, now look back at the last time you complained about how difficult having to compete is for yourself, and look at it through the lens of a lifetime of challenges Jeanette has faced to be able to do what we might take for granted every day.
I'm trying to teach my kids right now about fair, because my 6-year-old is big on
yes.
that's not fair. And I did show them the trailer. Obviously, they haven't seen the film yet. I'm not sure if they'd be ready to see it, but they were trying to comprehend what they saw in the trailer. And I explained to them, I said, when I tell you that things aren't fair, I said, this person's body has done things to her that are totally unfair. Should never happen to anybody. And so you need to understand that, one, there really isn't such thing as fair, but like, you also shouldn't be complaining about what's fair because your sister got to go to a birthday party that you didn't get to go to.
Or because I have to go clean my room.
Right. I mean, that's just,
I know.
sometimes we all need reminders about what it's all about. Anything else noteworthy yet? Again, we want to hear what you guys have to say. I know a lot of you are probably feeling emotional. I know we had some tears shed here in the studio. So this is an outlet, right? Let us know what you thought. You want to talk about it? We're here to talk a little bit about it. I think we've got another of our remote guests about ready to go. Our next guest is coming to us from the Asian Hall of Fame. Maki Shea has agreed to join us. Maki, there you are. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Oh, we are wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Anytime Jeanette Lee calls and her team calls, we pick up the phone, and we're just so happy for her and congratulate her and her family, and also for the whole billiards industry and everything that you've done to make billiards cool and make pool accessible to everyone. So we're so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Can you tell us, Maki, a little bit about the Asian Hall of Fame for the folks maybe that aren't familiar with it?
No, Asian Hall of Fame is a lot like Football Hall of Fame or Baseball Hall of Fame, Golf, Tennis Hall of Fame. It honors icons in the Asian community, but it has that added burden of helping to overcome this hate against Asians, bias against Asians, sometimes even unconscious prejudice, by celebrating the contributions Asians have made to the United States and worldwide. When Jeanette Lee was inducted in 2015, it was strictly highlighting Asian Pacific Americans. Now it's international, and we inducted our first Indigenous inductee a few weeks ago. So it really is celebrating Asian contributions and helping people see that hate is not good for anybody. So we're really excited for Jeanette Lee. We're very, very excited that she has really elevated not only the Asian community, but also equity and inclusion for all people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, how do you feel like this film resonates with the Asian Americans, in particular the female Asian Americans, right? We learned a lot about that in the film and in the way that sometimes they're perceived. So, again, you kind of mentioned during a time when we're seeing in the news there are some things directed at Asian folks, especially since the pandemic began. How important is it what we just saw on film to have somebody from the Asian community representing those folks?
That's a two-pronged question, and I love that question because it encapsulates everything about Jeanette and why this documentary is so precious for ESPN, for billiards, and also just for everyone. The first prong of that is what it means to be Asian American, what it means for the Asian American community. But the second prong of that is also tracing back heritage and lineage. Her family originally came to America from Korea, and how to honor that multi-generational, multinational connection. So the Asian American community, as you've pointed out, has suffered quite a bit, not only for the last 509 years of Western invasion, but certainly the last 2 years since COVID, since political rhetoric has really pinpointed Asians and Chinese and Koreans as a reason for the pandemic and for the economic downfall of what we're experiencing now. And that is simply not true. It's just simply mean and it's violent, and there's no room for hate in America. And what Jeanette Lee has done with this documentary is show that hate comes in all forms. It's directed towards women, it's directed towards Asians, it could be directed towards anyone on the street. And if you work hard and if you're really dedicated to your craft, you can transcend that and really show another way. The other thing that she really brings to this documentary and to the story is that we're all connected. We're all here in the United States. We're all contributing to the prosperity of America, but we also find our roots in many different places. I mean, even Americans living back east, or Americans in the Midwest, they all trace back to Europe, or they trace back to another country. And to honor that heritage is really important. She came to Bronx. She went to high school not knowing what to do with her culture. Her family at home spoke Korean, and she had to balance a lot of things to overcome and transcend. So this documentary hits on all the points that you just said. It really means so much to the Asian American community that one of our own has really shown success, not only in their craft, but on broadcast and national television and around the world. So we're just so thrilled that this documentary has made a stand for Asian equity and Asian excellence.
Fantastic. And we know that, again, Jeanette was inducted into the Asian Hall of Fame. I believe it was 2015. And I know this was kind of in your last answer, but if you could just sum up, what makes Jeanette a great addition or part of that Asian Hall of Fame, Maki?
Asian Hall of Fame from the very beginning, it was established about 2 decades ago, honored those who contributed tremendously to their industry. In this case, it's billiards. Honor those who contributed tremendously to elevating voices, but most recently really brings light to digital equity, gender equality, and also very importantly, iconic transformations. We have that one word that describes Asian Hall of Fame and of course describes Jeanette, which is to transform. Transform how women athletes are looked at in the industry, transform how Asian athletes are treated and how Asian female athletes are treated in the worldwide industry. And most importantly, their philanthropy, their advocacy, what they stand for. I get hate mail every day that says, how come you're not inducting this billionaire or this Bitcoin millionaire? Or how come you're not inducting so-and-so who has 1 million Oscars and 1 million Grammys and all of that? And that's all very nice and wonderful. And Jeanette, of course, has a plethora of accolades and accomplishments, including her induction into the Billiards Congress Hall of Fame in 2013. But we're looking for something beyond that. We're looking for icons and legends that really stand the test of time. We're not looking for hot today, not tomorrow. We're looking for multi-generational success, and that her story, just like all of our Hall of Famers, are examples for legacy to come and generations to come. So we're just so proud of her. We're just so honored by her and privileged by her. And we know that her success is one that lifts all boats. And we're just so excited and thrilled that ESPN has focused on her story and that APA has focused on her story and really elevated the narrative for generations to come.
Maki, I want to thank you for joining us this evening, talking to us a little bit not only about your opinion on the film and how Jeanette was portrayed, but also really educating us on some of the challenges that the Asian community is facing. And we do hope that the film, affects things in a positive way. And again, we appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and you're doing amazing work and really doing for billiards what Queen Gambit did for chess, and I'm just so excited to be part of your success and transforming billiards into a worldwide phenomenon. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you again.
All right, thank you, Maki. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
All right, so very interesting perspective. I think one of the things, again, when we go back to kind of the racism, but then later in the film, we start talking about, she's starting to inspire other Korean Americans because there just wasn't a lot of Korean Americans at that time on TV.
Yeah, and they specifically touch on sports, right? And they show a few of the other Asian Americans within sports, and Jeanette absolutely was huge during that time. Still is. I mean, there's one person that everybody I've ever met who finds out I work in pool wants to know if I've met. And that's Jeanette Lee.
Yes.
So
I mean,
true.
her impact culturally across the board it's unreal. And I'm glad that she can provide that positive, that positive look and that positive perspective for Asian Americans, and somebody to look up to want to be like and emulate, and somebody else for the rest of the world to see, like, we're all people. There's really no room for hate of anyone, on the basis of race, ethnicity, or that. And I will say, if you've ever met Jeanette or you've ever been around, the last thing that's ever going to come to your mind is hate, right? And I think that's just so true of so many people out there, and the fact that she's pivotal in fighting that, it's important. It's bigger than pool.
For sure. Speaking of pool, I mean, kind of picking up in the film where we left off in that Jeanette has fully integrated herself into the pool community in New York City. Now she's taking her talents to the Women's Professional Billiard Association, right? The WPBA, and this is where Tracy has been just itching to get involved in the conversation. But I think we've got a clip that's about ready to go. But I mean, you're going to see that she kind of bursts onto the scene, and it starts to ruffle some feathers. Let's take a look at the clip, and then we'll let Tracy speak her mind.
Welcome back to Sioux City, Iowa. ESPN's coverage of Connolly's National 9-Ball Championship at the table now and getting set to break. Jeanette Lee.
The WPBA was a very close-knit little family and very together. And when Jeanette came on the scene, it was like a bomb coming through. Here I am. You kind of sat back and said, please, who is this person?
So you get a little taste of it there, right? Jeanette bursts in. There's one more clip I want to play, also kind of related to the same thing. Her kind of coming on the scene in the WPBA 1994, starting to have a lot of success and shaking things up.
Yeah, she needs to get out here to let Jeanette know that she's come to play. She's not thinking twice. Nice shot.
I remember Jeanette was as focused as I've ever seen her. I mean, she wanted this title. She played fast and fierce. She was on fire.
Yes! That makes 4 titles for Jeanette this year.
So we don't get it in the clips there, but this is where, you hear in the film, if you've watched the entire film, you start to hear about, she wasn't necessarily well-liked, or she does not feel well-liked from the get-go. It sounds like, to me, it sounded like the new girl that shows up at high school, the new pretty girl,
Mean girls.
talented, and the other pretty girls maybe are not so into it. And it just sounds like it gets pretty mean, like Yertle the turtle.
Yertle the turtle.
Yertle.
I was so angry when that part came through. I mean, somebody sent her that book and basically told her that she stepped all over people to get to the top, and that's just cruel. So mean.
Who do you think sent the book?
I am not going to.
We'll wait till our
I'm
next
not gonna
guest.
guess.
Panozzo, that one's coming for you,
Yeah.
our next guest. We got a few minutes, but yeah, that was quite the story that somebody
I was just really surprised. And I mean, I've spent time with Allison when she used to work with us, and Ava, obviously. It just surprised me that they would not be welcoming to everyone, right? And I kind of get the fact that Jeanette probably was intimidating, and I do understand that they were trying to show themselves as equals with the men, right? Which probably contributed to the way they dressed versus the way Jeanette did. But Jeanette was trying to do something too. She was creating a brand. And, for that, I completely admire her.
Well, and I give her credit that she didn't try to change or be different just to
Exactly.
fit in with them. I mean, she was who she was, and she held on to that. So
Because some people would have crumbled. They would have been like,
Absolutely.
I don't want everybody to hate me. I'm going to wear turtlenecks and long pants.
Yeah, I think it's important to say Jeanette wanted the light shined on her too. I mean, she knows that she's dressing different. She knows how she looks out there, and Jeanette is very strong in herself, right? She's not going to let anybody intimidate her off of that, but she definitely wants to be the center of attention as well. And I think using
She was
the
doing it with
negative-
intent, though.
Yes, but using the negative attention as well just helped her on the table, I believe. As she says, pretty doesn't make shots. I
Exactly.
believe is what she said. And that's true. But to be the new one and to be brash I mean, we've seen it in other sports too. It's not as if Jeanette is unique within the pool world for what she did, but you do see in other sports when somebody's brash, they're young, they're competitive, and they're good. Oftentimes the old guard isn't too pleased to have that person come along, and you start hearing about unwritten rules and things like that. But she was there, and she was going to stay, and all intents and purposes, as the documentary shows, it drove viewership, right? It got attention. And just as a tournament director, I'll just go out and say, as a tournament director, what she's wearing, pretty conservative by today's standards. Some of the things we gotta deal with.
Yeah, I didn't remember us being so conservative in the '90s, but you know, I guess so.
Not
I mean,
as conservative as the other ladies were, but by today's standards, it'd be just fine in tournament play. As a matter of fact, yes, accepted compared to a lot of the things that we do encounter.
But shame on the person who gave her that Euro.
Yeah, and I want to be fair here because, you know, the film featured Ava and Lori John and Allison, and I don't know if it kind of almost alluded to maybe they were part of that group. I don't know that that was the case or just how it kind of came across, because they did tie in the New York Times, I think it was the New York Times article that Ava was front page cover girl of, and Jeanette had an inclusion in there in her first event. They didn't really resolve that in the film. Like it was, so I was like, did it hit the cutting room floor maybe? And there was a little more to the story. So I never fully understood if the women in the film were the ones that she had issues with, or there were others, you know? And I know she has close relationships with all of them now, but so I never really understood who exactly, and you know, maybe that part isn't as important, but when you kind of know that world, you're like, I wonder who that was.
Right.
I wonder who that was. But it is interesting because the timing now is Jeanette has burst on the scene, but something else big is going on for the WPBA, and that is their contract with ESPN 2. And so you're starting to see a lot of professional pool tournaments showing up, and it's into this timing magic of these things, these elements that are coming together to create this icon. And I think we've got another clip queued up. We'll show you talking about the WPBA and kind of how Jeanette were merging at a special time.
The first time I saw her, I was flipping channels, and my thumb immediately came off the remote control because I saw something that I'd never seen. She was fierce-looking, focused, and determined. It was mesmerizing.
Take a 3-0 lead against Vivian Villarreal, who has yet to get up off that chair. Oh, Vivian! The last 2 racks.
We helped create ESPN 2 because they needed programming, and we had programming.
We became something that people wanted to watch.
The women had hours and hours on ESPN, and the men had virtually none. All the focus was on the women, and Jeanette was leading the charge.
Jeanette was leading the charge. You know, one of the things I always felt like with Jeanette is, and this ties back into her work ethic, is when she's asked to do something, and I guarantee this would have been the way, you know, with the WPBA and the local media had said, hey, can the Black Widow come down? I mean, she would have been all about it. And so whether they wanted to accept her or not, I think they probably at some point recognized, it might have taken a while, recognized that she was going to be good for what they were doing. And, you know, in the end, it seemed like, what's the old saying about all tides raise all ships, or...
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but I'm not going to correct you because it's funny.
Okay, close enough. I think the viewers get it. And they were good for each other, right? It was a special time for the WPBA. It was a special time that Jeanette was, at this point, she's like full-blown Black Widow. I mean, she's now building an iconic brand while playing pool. And again, these things are happening kind of parallel because, you know, Jeanette's success did not necessarily come from playing on the WPBA tour. You know, her success, and Ava says this in the film, you know, she basically says Jeanette's an icon because Jeanette made it happen. And that is very true. I mean, the woman just pushes and pushes, and you know, she's a great saleswoman. You know, she gets no, and she figures out a way to ask in a different way.
Oh, yeah.
And she'll ask in a different way, and a different way, until she gets the answer she's looking for. And it's a, you know, it's a pretty strong thing. And so anyway, we're kind of at the point now where popularity is rising. It got a little cringy in there for a little bit, like the Man Show clip in particular.
Oh.
And I kind of realized, like, you know, I don't know that Jeanette overtly sells the sex, but she certainly leans into it the sex appeal kind of thing, but she's probably, I mean, they showed the Man Show, which was,
That show's
That
just
was
cringy in
cringy.
general.
It
I mean, that was really bad.
For as
Yeah.
conservative as people dressed in the 90s, it is interesting to see those old Man Show clips and what was happening, on Comedy Central late night.
Yeah.
Comedy Central. So.
But she keeps her cool, and she grins and bears it, and and she gets through it, right? I don't think she loved it, but I think Jeanette always had her eye on the prize.
She
of,
recognized the opportunity. by
this is
being
an
on there.
opportunity, and I need to. This is a springboard to other things, as we've seen. I mean, ESPN 30 for 30 doesn't get much bigger than that for Jeanette. So, and then you had the newswoman.
Oh my gosh.
Who was kind of cold,
she was
right?
rude.
I mean, I'll let the ladies hit that one, right?
Well,
Like
her outfit wasn't even.
And it was one shoulder.
It
She's
was
like,
one
what? I'm
shoulder, but
showing
it
the
was
shoulder.
up high. I mean, it wasn't like.
Oh, good
Maybe
gravy.
in that year's standards, it was risque. I don't
think that's
know. I
risque.
didn't think it was either. It
No.
wasn't low cut or anything. No. So.
Well, the news lady had the turtleneck all the way up to her chin and the jacket on top of it, so she wasn't feeling the skin, I guess. I'd love to know where that interview was, right? Like, what town was that in? Curiously enough, but anyway, and again, you hear kind of Mike Panozzo, publisher, Billiards Digest, who's going to be our next guest here in a minute. He kind of comments like, if she didn't have any problem selling, the sexy side of her brand, I didn't have any problem selling it either. And again, it kind of just works for everybody, and it works in a great way. Again, today's standards, I don't think any of it was like way over the top, but maybe, back then it was a little different.
I can't even remember what I wore back in the 90s.
Flannels
You weren't born yet.
Oh, I was born.
Let's not get into a discussion about everybody's birthday. I'm sure that we don't want anybody else crying, at least not yet. So
Bill and I are about the same age, I think.
yeah. So again, Jeanette's at peak success. Sponsorships are coming to her. Huge sponsorships. Bass Pro was a big one. You've seen her in the car commercial. She gets the Sports Center thing. She has gone mainstream in a way that really no pool player, I don't think, ever has. I mean, you had Mizrak with the beer commercial way back when, but that was like 15 minutes of fame and move on.
Yeah. Transcends.
Jeanette is landing appearances on David Letterman, and she's doing just any kind of media you could imagine. She's on the red carpet at the ESPY Awards. Just really impressive lineup of work that she's getting. And that's kind of when APA comes into her life, sometime around that period. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, she wins that gold medal in the World Games. Yeah. And I thought this was particularly cool because, to me, it was somewhat full circle from the early racism that she experienced, right? She's an outcast in her community. And now she's representing a nation, right, of all of us. And, having one of the highest achievements. And I just thought that was a really cool moment.
It was cool.
So, and then we start to getting into the pain, right? I mean, the pain has always been there, but in the film, this is where we start learning more and more about she's really overcoming a lot of physical ailments to do what she's doing, and it will finally catch up to her. But I want to go to our next guest. I think he's ready to go. Mike Panozzo. Mike is the publisher of Billiards Digest, and he is also one of the stars of the film, had a number of appearances in the film. There's Mike Panozzo. Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you guys.
Mike, how excited were you when you heard that this 30 for 30 film was being done by ESPN?
Oh, that's, it's like a dream come true for the pool industry and for Jeanette and, for Tom. And, that's about as big a platform as you can hope to be on if you're, in the sports field, right? So yeah, it was great. I was really stoked about that because I knew they were going to do a fantastic job. Their filmmakers are, the people that they contract to do these are just top notch, and it showed in this film.
Absolutely. So you were actively involved in the film. I mean, you appear on screen several times, kind of as an industry insider or expert. I know behind the scenes you probably helped secure a number of the assets, whether it was video or photos. Tell us about the experience of really working on this project.
Yeah, it was cool because, they asked me a lot of things like getting records for them, documentation, photos, videos, connecting them with certain people that they might want to speak with. So it was fun because I got to be involved at that level not a huge amount, but enough to where I got a feel for what they were putting together and what all they were accumulating. And that's what makes it such an astonishing thing when you see these films that they come up with, and they went through, 30 hours of interview tapes and 50 hours of playing tapes that Jeanette sent them, and all the images and everything, and then to try to make a story out of it. It's pretty astonishing what these film creators do.
So what did you think, Mike, of the finished product once you had a chance to see it?
You know what? I couldn't be happier. I'm sure the pool fans wish there was more pool in it, but it was, to me, it's not even it's not a pool documentary. It's not even, to me, a sports documentary, and that's why I would love to see this get some traction outside of the sports genre. I would like to see it in documentary film festivals all over the country. I'd like to see everybody get a chance to see this because it speaks to everyone. And that's the thing that I found so amazing about it. The director, Ursula Lang, she did such an amazing job, I thought, of developing these different layers of the story. And what I loved as much as anything, when I saw the title was Jeanette Lee versus, I was like, I love that title because that's what this whole documentary is about. It's about Jeanette Lee versus racism. It's about Jeanette Lee versus sexism. It's about Jeanette Lee versus the establishment in pool. It's about Jeanette Lee versus stereotypes. It's about Jeanette Lee versus back problems and other physical ailments. And one of the cool aspects of this to me was that the people who put this together, the director, the editor, and the producer, are all women of color. And so they could see these layers evolve as they were putting the story together. And I think that became such an important part of it to them because it kind of resonated with them. They looked at Jeanette as, here is this badass woman of color example of how you don't take no for an answer and you do what you're set to do and you just charge ahead and get it done on your terms. If you have to play a little bit to their side to get some things done, you roll with it. You just always stay true to what you want to do. And so I think that she was kind of almost like a hero figure to the people who produced this documentary. And I think that showed through. I thought about later, what would have happened if, some sports guy, director, producer would have put this together? I think it would have looked a lot different. And I'm so glad that it turned out the way it did because it really transcends pool and sports. And, if you're an Asian American, you want to see this film. If you're a woman, you want to see this film. If you're an athlete who's gone through any kind of physical, hurdles, you want to see this. I mean, it speaks to so many people. And that to me is the great opportunity this film has to bring our story into the mainstream.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Words and Pictures, I think, is the production company, and they did really a phenomenal job of telling a story, and one that I hope hits a lot of people in different ways, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Mike, you've been in the industry for a long time. I'm curious, where does an ESPN 30 for 30 film, I mean, in terms of significance to the sport, I mean, you were around for The Color of Money. You've been around for some of the bigger things that kind of transcend pool. Where does this fall in line with some of those big things?
Well, I'm delighted to say that that The Hustler predates me. So at least I got that predating me. But The Color of Money, listen, that was something that's once in a lifetime type of impact on the industry around the globe, where pool, just the sales, every cue maker, table maker, whatever, that was more of a business effect. This to me affects how people look at the sport and how people look at the people who play the sport. So I think that this has probably more importance to me personally as a pool story, as a story about someone from our ranks, someone that we grew up with, someone that we know and love. It's more important to me than that economic windfall that The Color of Money did. But it's certainly top three: Color of Money, Hustler, Jeanette Lee 30 for 30, Ava, covered in New York Times magazine, is right up there too. That had a huge impact on the industry, especially on women's pool at the time. So yeah, it's right there.
Fantastic. Yeah, pool over the last couple weeks, Mike, has been on a pretty good streak outside the industry. We had the Moscone Cup a couple weeks ago. We followed up with the great 60 Minutes piece on Shane Van Boning, and now this 30 for 30 with ESPN on Jeanette Lee. I mean, is this just, I guess it's just total coincidence, but it's great for pool as we go into the new year.
It sounds something. We had a pretty good year last month. You know, it's just like, it's been great. I just hope that we have the ability and the vision to take advantage of the opportunities that might come from this. I don't know what they are, but we just have to be ready to respond and get as much, you know, out of this exposure as we can. I do have something that I need to say to Tracy on Yertle the Turtle. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in 1994, we did that cover story with Jeanette on the motorcycle. And she was, and this is probably a fallout from that, because she was quoted as saying, I plan on being number one. And my thought is either get out of the way or get stepped on. Those were her exact words. So I wouldn't be too surprised if that Yertle the Turtle book wasn't a direct response to that quote in the magazine.
Okay.
Wow.
No, but I believe I'm not justifying it at all. But it was funny that the Yertle Turtle thing came up because I remember that quote from her like it was yesterday.
Wow, that is some very interesting insight for sure. And it leads into my next question really well, Mike, because of the pool content that we saw in the film. You know, one of the challenges Jeanette faced was kind of acceptance amongst the ladies on the WPBA. And, you know, in a lot of ways, certain things resolve themselves in the film. But in that case, I wasn't real clear on when that acceptance came, or if it ever came, or if it came with the cancer diagnosis. I mean, in your opinion, at what point did the other ladies of the WPBA finally say, hey, you know what, Jeanette is good for us, and she's part of us, she's one of us? Did that ever come?
I think that it certainly came that they accepted her as part of them and one of them and a driving force and that type of thing. But I think that she was always just a little bit of the marching to the beat of her own drummer type of person. And so there was always kind of that two lanes that they drove in. But I think that they coexisted in that a lot better in the later years. I still don't think there was a lot of, you know, palsy, Jeanette and six of the women going out to dinner. That never really became the case. And it was in part because Jeanette always had 6 million obligations every place she went. Dinner with this sponsor. I mean, she had more dinners with sponsors than she had with George at the time. So, you know, it was kind of came part and parcel with who she was and what her, how she worked her brand.
Interesting. So, Mike, last question, you know, and it's not so much a question, but if you could just talk about Jeanette's significance to the billiard industry. I mean, you know, she's been a treasure for us, and I'm just, you know, from everything you've seen and for as long as you've been around in the pool world, you know, what does Jeanette mean to pool?
I would argue that she's the biggest name pool's ever had. I would take her over Minnesota Fats. I would take her over Moscone. You know, I would take her over Miserac, certainly. You know, I think that she transcended the sport at a time when the world was becoming so much smaller, and you had social media, and you had, you know, all these platforms to be famous on, which Fats and Moscone didn't have. And I think she knew better than anyone how to take advantage of those opportunities and how to work those platforms and create this brand and this image and this name for herself. And I think what that's done for the game is just kept it in everyone's eyes for years and years and years. I mean, you know, you guys talked about it before. You know, nobody you ever meet and you tell them you're in pool doesn't first ask you about Jeanette. And really, one of the cool things that I think, I'm not sure if anybody's discussed this, but one of the cool things about this documentary tonight is that Jeanette's really kind of been out of the limelight for more than a decade, really, right? And so tonight she reached an audience that's that didn't grow up with her. There are a lot of people watching ESPN tonight, excuse me, that didn't grow up with Jeanette Lee, but they got to see her story tonight, and they got to learn about pool, and they got to learn about a great athlete and a hard driving woman who, did things on her own term and created this name for herself. I think that we reached a whole new young audience with this tonight.
I hope you're right, Mike. Listen, I want to thank you for taking the time this evening to join us. Really enjoy hearing your perspective, not just about the film and Jeanette, but in general on all things pool. So again, thank you for the time, and congratulations on being part of the film. I thought you had a great role in it, and I thought you certainly added to it. So congratulations on that to you as well.
I was a serviceable person for them to be able to get from one topic to the next with someone who threw in 6 words of credibility here and there. But it was fun to be part of. Thanks you guys for doing this this show, which is great. It's nice to, like I said, take advantage of the opportunity and talk, while this is a hot talking point. So thank you.
All right, Mike. We'll see you again soon, buddy. Take care of yourself, and Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
All right, so some inside baseball or inside billiards there for you, Tracy, about Erdl. Yerdle the turtle. I didn't. My kids didn't have that one, I guess. So interesting perspective for Mike. And again, he knows a lot about the pool community, and I think they couldn't have picked a better guy to be included in the film. Makes a lot of sense. So how are we doing on comments? Have we heard from anybody else? Let's hear what some other folks have to say.
Hear some comments. Jeff says, I always said my mom is the strongest woman I'll ever know, beating stage 4 breast cancer and still dealing with other issues up until this day. But after watching this documentary, Jeanette Lee is a close second. Wow, God bless her. Les says, her work speaks so loud that we can hardly hear what the naysayers are saying. I thought that was pretty good. What else we got here? People who disrupt the status quo tend to be the ones who get the most kickback at the beginning, but she earned respect with her play, and that's communicated as well in the documentary.
Nice. Some very nice things. Obviously, as we get deeper into the film, post-career, we do get into the cancer diagnosis, and I know that one of the commenters mentioned the respect he has for his mother, who's in a cancer battle. Obviously, Jeanette, very public with that information. But our next guest, I want to go ahead and bring in. He is the Chief Marketing Officer for the V Foundation. And Jeanette has gotten involved with them. We have Jonathan Karen. Jonathan, appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening, talking a little bit about Jeanette Lee versus the ESPN 30 for 30 film. Curious, Jonathan, if you could just tell us a little bit about the V Foundation. I mean, I remember as a teenager in like the early 90s, I remember Jimmy V, and I think it was don't give up, don't ever give up. And I'm sure over the last 30 years, you guys have evolved quite a bit. So tell us a little bit about the V Foundation, please.
Sure. So nice to see everybody. One of the clips they talked about, Jeanette Lee helped create ESPN2. ESPN helped create us 29 years ago. They worked with Jim Valvano and said, we want to form a cancer nonprofit and raise money for research. And at the first ESPY Awards in 1993, Jim Valvano, who was an iconic basketball coach who won the national championship at NC State and went on to a broadcast career after that, said that cancer may not save my life, but it may save the life of my children or somebody you love. And it has. It saved his daughter as a cancer survivor, and it saved so many other people's lives. So we exist today to raise money to fund cancer research that is going to help save lives today and tomorrow. And there are 18 million cancer survivors in the U.S., which is a huge increase over survival rates 30 years ago. And that's because of people supporting the work that we do and having amazing ambassadors like Jeanette Lee helping tell the story, her personal story, and then the story of what research does to improve survival rates.
Yeah, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you about that. Jeanette was recently named an ambassador for the V Foundation. Can you tell us kind of what that means and why she was selected?
Well, she had a relationship with ESPN, and she also understands the important work that we're doing. We fund research, groundbreaking research that is innovative, that research today leads to cures tomorrow. And so she is lending her name, her image, her celebrity to help us tell our story so that we could raise more money to fund more research and improve survival rates.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's great having someone from the sports world of her stature involved. I'm curious, though, if it's unique to have someone involved who is also actively battling, has their own battle against cancer ongoing. I mean, is she unique in terms of your ambassadors, or is that kind of something that's common amongst them?
It's common. We wish it wasn't, but it is
Yeah.
common. So Dick Vitale, who is an ESPN personality who's been on his own cancer journey recently, Robin Roberts in the ESPN Disney family has been an ambassador for us as well. So we have many people who are survivors who've 5+ years of survivorship, and then many people who are also going through cancer journeys right now and want to use those, want to tell their story to make sure that people take steps to see their doctors and get treated. Take preventative steps, because the earlier you catch, the earlier you diagnose cancer, the better chances are for a positive outcome.
Well, God bless the work you guys are doing. I know that we've all been touched in one way or another by someone with cancer. Jonathan, if you could, though, just tell us how the folks can support Jeanette, support the V Foundation. What can people do to help you guys, help all of us in return?
Yeah, I see it up on the screen right now, but if you go to v.org, it's very easy to donate. You can learn more about our organization and the research and the researchers that we fund and the types of research. But at the end of the day, what we do is we work with predominantly 71 national cancer institutes, which are considered the best cancer research institutions in the country. We work with we put out grants for different cancer research initiatives, whether it's ovarian cancer, which is what Jeanette is battling, pediatric cancer, breast cancer, all different cancer types. And we ask each of those research institutions to submit a grant request. We have a scientific advisory committee, which is an independent group of some of the best and brightest minds in this space that evaluate those grant requests. And then we award the grants to what we think are the most impactful submissions, so that we can do the research that is going to lead to positive outcomes. So we ask people to go to v.org to donate, sign up for our emails, follow us on social, and get educated and take the steps that each person needs to make sure that they're taking care of their health.
Jonathan, we are grateful for you taking a few minutes to join us tonight and to talk about the V Foundation and Jeanette's role in that. And we wish you well and keep fighting the good fight, because it sounds like there's a long battle ahead. But we do appreciate you joining us and encourage folks to donate to the V Foundation.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So, and I mean, this is the part of the film where it gets difficult, right? We go into kind of this post-career time for Jeanette, right? And one of the interesting things about that is, and it touched on it in the film, I felt like knowing Jeanette, I knew it a little more intimately, but it's her challenge with having children initially, right? Like, she's not able to have children. And so 2004, she adopts Cheyenne, right? And it's interesting because there's a clip in the film from the WPBA event down at the Hard Rock in Fort Lauderdale, which was the best WPBA event. I always loved going to it. Happened to be at that event because we were sponsoring, you'll remember, Allison Fisher back in those years. And Allison was a perennial contender in the final TV rounds, right? The semifinals and the finals. But that particular year, she ran into Jeanette in the finals, and I think Jeanette beat her 7-0. And I had a front row seat for that one, for her to beat our champion at the time. We weren't working with Jeanette yet, but the cool thing about it is she had Cheyenne there with her, and it almost reminded me of the Lion King, like Simba. And but she was so proud. I mean, was so proud because she had experienced this great success. And again, this is as we're kind of winding down in her career, to beat somebody like Allison in that way. It's such a big event, and to have her new baby there was just, I'm sure, a moment that she will never forget.
One of those special times. I mean, Allison, the film says it, best women's pool player of all time.
Hands down, absolutely.
Hands down, right? But to beat her on that stage with the family now, and the family gets to experience it, and she gets to be there, that's huge too. I mean, it's just another one of those demarcations they kind of chose, you know, that thing that just makes Jeanette special.
Yeah.
You know, she does special things at special times, right? Makes most of it.
Yeah, and so she follows that up by bringing in a 14-year-old young man, John, who some of us have met John over the years, her adopted son. And, you know, to me, it wasn't until I saw the film. I mean, I met John years ago, but watching the film, you have to wonder if Jeanette's thinking back to her teen years when she's lost and she sees this young man who sounded like, you know, at least what's conveyed in the film, he needed a different path. And so she brings him into her home. And to me, that was pretty special. And I like to think that those earlier experiences, which were so difficult, helped shape something much more positive later.
I think it takes a special person to adopt a child, one to adopt a teenage,
Exactly.
right? To adopt a teenager, one that you already recognize might need, you know, have a legitimate need. But by then, a lot of kids are passed over, you know, they're looked at as damaged goods or something. I think you're right, Jason. I think it had to play in. And I think it just goes to Jeanette's character that she can do something like it. It's Jeanette Lee, but she will bring, you know, John in and make him part of her family because she cares that much. It's just special.
Yeah.
And she felt like she could make a difference, I think.
And I have no doubt that she has. So then she wants another baby, right? And Chloe comes via surrogate, right? Again, Jeanette had a lot of challenges with building a family. And then the surprise at the end, because this is where we start working with Jeanette, is 2009.
Yep.
And I think she had Chloe and was kind of, you know, trying to get some things off the ground back to the pool world. And then unexpectedly, right, Savannah. And it was like this miracle because, I mean, you know, folks that have been through this know, like, kind of when you think it can't happen and then it does, it's like, wow, where did that come from? And really kind of rounds out her perfect little family.
Yeah, and I remember all of that because like you said, we had just started working with her, and thinking back to like the Black Widow tour we were talking about earlier, I mean, to think that she had 2 babies like while we were doing that, like now being a mom and like thinking back to that, you know, she was probably sleep deprived and everything else at the time, but you know, you never would have known it.
We had no appreciation for it then because we didn't have kids. And now as I look back, I'm
Young
like,
and swinging
my
single.
God, this
I know,
woman,
right?
I'm dragging her across the country and making her get up at 5:30 in the morning and go, you know, shoot a pool ball out of some reporter's mouth without crushing his nose or his jaw. Like, you know, she just magic about that. So I thought it was a really cool part of Jeanette's journey that I guess it was addressed in the film. For me, I remember it so much more vividly because it was when we started working together, and you know, it just how it all kind of worked out in the end for her. I thought that was fantastic. So, and at this point in her life, she talks about in the film that she stops playing on tour. In fairness, I feel like the WPBA at that point was struggling. Their event calendar had really dipped down. So I don't, you know, I think partially, yes, she probably did step away, but at the same time, it was not what it had been in the years where they were growing together. And so I think that also played a pretty big role in her sunsetting her career.
Yeah.
I think it has to, right? I mean, as it's brought up in the film, she has this huge other side, right? Her own brand, her own thing. She's self-supported in that, and the tour really was kind of dwindling down at the time. It was definitely, you know, they were struggling to get events on the calendar. Through some of that, I know because we were working with them directly on those, and we saw less and less. I think also too, though, I mean, the back, you know, the health, the kids, all of it plays into it. The competitive drive didn't stop it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal what she was dealing with physically. And this is another one where as I look back in time, like I feel somewhat guilty because I think she said it in the film that like, it's hard for people to appreciate what I'm going through because on the outside, I look healthy and good. And I mean, that's so true. You know, I mean, I knew about her health issues And I don't know if that it was just so common that I kind of got numb to it.
She didn't complain though.
No.
She didn't, but I mean, we were always aware,
I
right?
know.
But and you just kind of thought, well, I mean, you know, she looks great, and so she'll be able to do it because she's such a hard worker. But you know, I mean, she was probably suffering through so many different things, and yet just picks herself up and moves forward. Kind of like her sister Doris said, you know, the Koreans, you know, there may be something that's bad that's weighing you down, but you just kind of push forward.
Push forward
and
anyway.
I think Jeanette's been doing that for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you would never know. You'd never
That's
know.
what I've never heard her complain ever. And
Yeah.
what was her nick? I think Tom said it. Jeanette never let you down, Lee. I mean, I don't think she ever says no. She knows what she has to do and she does it.
She's driven.
Very driven.
She's driven, and just Jeanette's fierce. I mean, it's hard to think about a warrior like that and an icon like that as anything but that. And the film throughout points out the human aspect beyond just the image, right? Which is most important. I mean, at the end of the day, she's a person, and she's a person who's gone through so much, right? But doesn't let her stop her. Doesn't let it stop her at all.
Yeah.
Just keeps driving forward.
I go back to when we signed her to her sponsorship in like 2009. I can remember the discussion in the office was, we got to get it in the contract. Everything we want her to do, we got to get it in the contract, because you're dealing with somebody that's at such a high level of celebrity that if it's not in the contract, she's not going to do it. And we signed the contract. I remember driving up to Indianapolis, Greg Fletcher and I, the current president of APA, we drove up to Indianapolis, met with Jeanette. She brought us into her house. She immediately, you know, was showing us her back, and you know, we started talking about the contract, and she was like, oh, and she had all these other things she wanted to do. And we're like, great, let's do them. Yeah. They're not in the contract. And she's like, oh, I don't worry about the contract. She said, my whole thing, I'm trying to remember what she said. I think it was under promise, over deliver. And that was what she would always kind of preach is, you know, I'll guarantee I'm going to do this, but I'm going to go above and beyond. And again, that speaks to her. You know, Ava said it best, Jeanette's an icon because Jeanette made it happen. And
that's just fascinating considering all she was doing.
Yeah.
You know, if what she was committing to is under promising, like that's impressive all in itself.
Absolutely. So about this time, 2013, she's inducted into the Billiard Hall of Fame. Fantastic evening. Same night, Barry Hearn of Matchroom is inducted. You and I were there along with some other APA contingent, and really, it was a great night for Jeanette. Her longtime manager, Tom George, introduces her. And but what was interesting to me about the Hall of Fame, and this wasn't discussed, and maybe it's not a big deal, but that was her second year of eligibility for the Hall of Fame, 2013. She was not a first ballot in 2012 when she was eligible, which always kind of surprised me. Karen Corr got that spot in 2012.
But you do hear even Panozzo pointing out that Karen Corr, it's Allison Fisher, Karen Corr, on the table.
Yes.
And in that respect, yes. In fame, which is always a discussion about Hall of Fame, any sport. Is it stats? Is it titles? Or is it fame?
Yeah.
She's first ballot in fame all day long.
Yeah.
You know, but on the table, Corr was better.
Yeah, and even that evening, I mean, you might remember that she was, you know, she thanked a lot of people, but she actually was like, Jason Bowman, APA, I love you.
She did, yeah.
You know, she says this in front of the Bells, who are the owners of APA. You know, I mean, at the time, Renee Lyle, my boss.
Beaming.
And I was just thinking, here's this woman in her greatest moment, and she is bringing all these other people, because it wasn't just me, she acknowledged. She was bringing them along for the ride. And that was really one of the things that I felt like made Jeanette special is she always wanted others to be able to enjoy in the success that she was achieving, right? She always wanted to, whether it was her friends, her family, you know, she always wanted to bring others along for the ride. And that was a really cool evening for not only her, but for me as well. So I do thank her for that when she watches this. So at this point in the film is where things really kind of, the tears start flowing, right? January 21, Jeanette is diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And I think we got a clip that can probably illustrate this better than I can.
Hey everyone, this is Jeanette Lee. As some of you may already know, but I have recently been diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And It's been a lot.
All right, Thor. We're coming in. Hey, Mom. Mama, are you awake? Okay, I'm really worried about you, so please don't nod off.
I don't want to lay down.
I don't want you to lay down either.
I'm gonna sit up for my daughter.
Okay. She's in bed a lot, and she's in pain. She can't get up. She's been sick all my life, so.
Like, some people just kind of think, like, oh, Jeanette Lee's just a superhuman. She's so cool, but she still is human. She still goes through that pain.
I mean, she has so many things going on, like diseases in her body, that it was kind of like a realization she was going to make it longer than anyone ever would, because she had been through so much.
You need a hug. Yes, I love it.
I love you.
See you later. Have
I
a
see
good
you
day at
later.
school.
It's Friday, Mom.
No, but you could still have school.
It's nighttime. It's nighttime, Mama.
That was a tougher clip to watch, you know. If you have children, you kind of know that when you have children, your biggest fear is, number one, something happening to your child. Number two, you leaving before they're ready to take on the world. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. And it's, again, we come back to Jeanette, how remarkable she is to share these private moments on a camera for millions of people to be able to consume, in the hopes that, you know, hopefully it helps somebody else out there, because she's not the only one and she recognizes that. But man, that one hits you, and it hits you hard, no doubt.
Yeah, that was tough. That one was really tough. I've heard Jeanette say it before, though, that part of her mission now is, you know, to show this and to be there for people that are going through this. And I remember the day that I found out about Jeanette's diagnosis, you know, and I remember how that made me feel knowing her. The closer you get to her and those feelings and her children, just how difficult that is. I mean, it's just, I don't know, the words can express something like that, that kind of experience, but I know that she tries to use it to, you know, to the betterment of other people. And that's just a testament to her character.
Yeah, and you know, I want to speak to that a little bit. I think we've got a clip loaded up, but I want to put it into some context before we show it to you guys. But we were down in Tampa in February for the U.S. Amateur Championship. I had not seen Jeanette, at least, you know, face to face since she had been diagnosed, and she just popped in. She didn't tell us she was coming, just came by to say hello. And you know, she came in, and I was shocked. She came back into the streaming area, into the booth, and you know, even got on the stream for a little while and was saying hi to all the fans. And in the midst of that, some gentleman had like worked his way back there. I don't know where he came from. Somehow he was suddenly standing next to us, and we're in the middle of streaming the match, right? So I'm like, but he, you know, he talks to Jeanette just for a second. He said, "Hey, I have a friend who's battling cancer and she's struggling. Like, is there any chance you could talk to her for just a minute?" And before you know it, like, this guy's phone is on Jeanette, and she's doing it, like, no hesitation. Certainly she'll do it. And in that moment, even though I'm on the stream, I decide to grab my cell phone, because what I'm realizing is something very powerful is happening in front of me. And I just want to show this clip because it speaks to what Bill said about, you know, even with what she's going through, she's still looking to inspire others.
Hello? There you go. Hi, Megan. I just wanted to wish you all my love and support. I get what you're going through. It's an impossible situation. But I love you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
powerful
I thought I
stuff.
was going to make it through without getting
It's
teary.
you know, it's powerful stuff. It speaks to Jeanette's strength,
That
you know, and
room
her ability.
changed when she walked in. Jeanette normally drops in USAM, but this was, you know, during the pandemic. And with her health, we pretty certain we wouldn't see Jeanette that trip. And I remember being at the control table running the tournament when she walked in. And in that moment, being thrilled to see her and scared that she was in that environment and impressed that she came, that she wanted to be there. But that whole room, when she walked in, changed. Everybody's attitude changed, and I think made everybody just grateful, you know, grateful to see Jeanette, grateful to be there and to have that experience. And then, yes, hopping on the phone, I got to witness that as well. I had to walk away because crying as a tournament director is not a good thing necessarily.
Never let them see
to
you
show
cry.
that, but it was a pretty special moment, one I won't forget.
Yeah. So I want to show one last clip from the film because I do think it kind of shows in some ways some things come full circle, at least within the billiard community. And we'll play that clip, and then I think we actually have Jeanette ready to join us for a live conversation. So we'll play the clip, and we'll come back, and then we'll bring Jeanette in.
I waited a couple weeks before I told my children. I was terrified of imagining my girls growing up without a mom.
She has inspired many by overcoming adversity. Today, she faces the most difficult challenge of her life, but no one dares to bet against the Black Widow. Inducted in 2013, the one and only Jeanette Lee.
Honestly, I was devastated. I lost my mum to ovarian cancer. I just couldn't believe it, you know? It was like take 2, take 3. I couldn't get it in my head.
That's when the billiard community, in my opinion, kind of comes together.
You don't wish that on anyone. You know, you have your things over the years and whatever, but I think we've been around each other for
And you can see the emotion there, the emotion here. I'm sure you folks at home, a lot of emotions. At this time, though, I want to bring her in. I want to bring in the star of the evening. If she's ready to go, Jeanette Lee, are you out there? There you are. Jeanette, tilt your phone up a little bit. Tilt your phone up a little bit, Jeanette, so we can see all your face. We're seeing you from the nose down. There's your beautiful face. There she is.
What's going on?
Jeanette Lee. It's great to see you, Jeanette. Wonderful evening I hope you're having. First off, you know, folks want to know, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
I'm actually doing well. I get a lot of support. I get a lot of support at home. I am cancer-free, by the way, today. So I'm thrilled about, nope, that wasn't better. Was it? I'm so sorry. It was fine earlier. I don't know what happened. Oh, it could have. Okay, anyway.
You look great. You look great.
Thank you, guys. Wasn't that show great? Wasn't it?
The film was fantastic. I know. So are you still in New York? Are you still with the family? Were you able to enjoy the premiere with them?
Yes, I'm here with my family. They don't all want to be on camera, but
Sure.
I have my children and my cousins and my close friends and my family. You know, they're all my family. So it's been,
Wonderful.
I mean, think about it. You have stage 4 ovarian cancer, and you're literally almost completely in the grave, and you get all these people flooding you with so much love and the generosity of their just going out of their way to tell me you really made a difference in my life, or I'm praying for you, or I'm, you know, whatever it is. It's just, I almost always felt like I was constantly fighting, you know, that part of becoming known or becoming number one, you get enemies. So, you know, and with the Black Widow, I never expected anyone to really love me. But I knew I had so many fans, and I was thankful for that. But I knew I also had haters, and I think I was unfair to myself. And this last year, to see, oh my God, I thought she hated me. She's sending me all these letters, and, you know, oh, I didn't know that guy, you know. I'm just getting all this news of just so much love and support, and it's really boosted my energy, because last year was the fight of my life.
Yeah, well, we're so happy to hear that you're feeling the love and support. Obviously, we love and support you as well, and we're just so happy to see a smile on your face. As we turn our attention to the film, you know, when Tom George or whomever came to you to pitch this project, I mean, what were your initial thoughts? I know you had a lot obviously going on at the time. What were your thoughts when they brought this to you?
I mean, immediately I was like, yes! Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's you get stage 4 cancer. It's scary no matter what you say. I mean, I could say the first thing I thought was, I am not leaving my children without a mother. I mean, immediately you're thinking, you know, protect them. But after that, you're thinking, all right, I'm not going to have gone through all this crap for no reason, right? Something good has to come from this. And the only way I can do it is to share my journey so that people can see me struggling just like them, and me getting through it and pushing through it and trying to stay positive. But I also did videos where I felt weak and I was scared, and I needed to be authentic to what I feel like is my family all over the world. And this has been an incredible experience. And APA has been there. To me, it feels like my whole career, because even though you guys didn't sign me till later, you've supported the women's, you know, WPBA since the beginning. You know, it was Larry Hubbard and Terry Bell, but they had, you know, a love of the game, but also great respect for women. And there was a lot of opportunities there. And I know that they always supported women's pools. So
Yeah.
to me, APA has always been there.
Well, that we love to hear that.
The most important. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We love hearing that. I'm curious, how challenging was working on this project for you, both physically and emotionally, with everything you had going on?
It was challenging. It was challenging. I feel like there's no, you know, I try to smile a lot, but that doesn't make it easy. It's just, I have a choice on how I respond to things. And I don't want to be miserable for the rest of what I've got, whatever time I have left. I don't want to be miserable. So I want to smile, and I want to bring joy, and I want to make more memories with my children, and, you know, things like that. It's important to me that that's what I leave behind, not just have them watch me wither away, dark and depressed in my dark, cold room or something like that, you know? And so, and it wasn't just for them. I got so much out of it, because I'm telling you, Jason, the love poured in like you would not believe. I mean, from every source possible. I mean, they weren't even just calling my phone. I mean, they were calling my cousins, my sisters, my best friends.
Yeah.
Is that Jennifer Beretta?
Yeah, that was from a night to celebrate that we did back in, I think, February of 21, when you were first diagnosed, and we were encouraging folks to donate to the Jeanette Lee Legacy Fund, which was set up to obviously support your children. And you know, again, I think everyone has wanted to come to your aid as much as they possibly could. So I'm glad that you have felt that love. I'm curious, now that you've seen the film, right? Like, what did Jeanette Lee think of a film that was based on her life? I mean, was it an accurate portrayal? Do you think it was fair? What were your thoughts?
I think they did such an incredible job. I really do. I think Words and Pictures, especially Ursula Leong, she was such a sponge, and she wanted to know everything, every weakness, every strength, everything that I wanted to do, or that I had gone through. She wanted to know about it. And the way that they handled me during that time, I was really going through a tough time. I mean, after chemo, it just changes you a little bit, and it's not forever. I continue to get better, but I do still have some memory, issues, and just that chemo fog, the brain fog where you can't quite think straight or remember what you're talking about and things like that.
Yes. Well, I'm happy that you enjoyed what they put together, and I think it's I think it's an honor very fitting of your career. I'm curious, you've done so much media over the course of your career. I'm curious where the 30 for 30, where does that rank for you personally, and all the different opportunities you've had to do things?
The way I thought about it back then, some people do think that it was all about me wanting to be famous, but I never found great value in just being famous. I didn't want another job to sustain me going out to these pro tournaments. I wanted to play pool for a living, and you learn almost immediately in 1 or 2 events. This is an expensive hobby. It's expensive, but you can't call it a career. There's just not enough money in it. And so I knew I had to get support. I needed to get sponsors, which I knew meant I had to have something to offer them. And I think that that's partially why I was completely full sponsorship with Imperial International. They took a chance on me, Dolphin Business Solutions, Sir Joseph. There were all these companies that just took a chance. And I was just like, I promise you I'm going to do this, and I will never forget. And I haven't. The support that I needed right then. And I think if I have a message and I'm going through things, like with scoliosis or fibromyalgia or ankylosing spondylitis, whatever it is, I got to get the word out. I got to be marketable and brand conscious, so that I could continue to be empowered to make my voice heard, which only comes from surviving the hard times. No one cares about what someone has to say if they've never gone through a hardship in their life, right? It's about those people that have suffered and had courage in the face of fear, not the absence of it. And this was something that, I'm so glad that Words and Pictures and really captured that. I was very proud of the movie. I was very touched by the movie. And Allison, she's been incredible. Immediately she was sending me texts of love and hope. And we've been rivals for a long time, but I've always respected her. She is, well, I'm not going to say she is, but she was kind of maybe one of the best players in the world. I don't know, but for a British girl, no I'm kidding. But I respected her, and she was my greatest adversary, and I enjoyed playing her the most. When people ask me, who is your favorite person to play against, or who is the most competitive, who's the best player you think you played against, and in every way it was always Allison. And then during this time, for her to continue to call me, send me messages and posts online about me, and then to see the film and she's crying and I just want to hug her through the screen, but it says a lot about her. And I made an appearance to a pool tournament last year, and just to show my face and to say thank you, and be out there and show that I'm I'm fighting this. I'm fighting this as best I can. And I played in this tournament, the Omega Championship, Acme Championship. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, but I drew Allie. So Allie and I are playing again, and I'm getting ready for the match, and she shows up wearing a Black Widow, one of my Black Widow jerseys. And I was just so honored, because earlier that day, I know that she had bought one, and I was touched, and I was like, oh, Allie, you don't have to pay for that. Just take it. And she goes, no, I want to. I want it, and it's just, she's so incredible. She really is, the way that she's carried herself over all this time. Pretty impressive.
I'm glad that you've been able to. Yeah, I won't tell her, but I'm glad you've been able to feel that love from some of your peers on the WPBA. Jeanette, my last question of the evening, because I want to let you get back to your family and spending your time with them. But when you were first diagnosed in 2021, you and I were having a conversation, and you said something in the conversation that really it stopped me in my tracks. I mean, it was really profound. I wrote it down because I couldn't believe you were saying it, but you said, God's not done with me. This is an opportunity or a way for me to inspire more people. And I thought that was a really powerful statement then. I think it's a very powerful statement now. And I'm curious if you feel like this film, Jeanette Lee Versus, accomplishes that goal for you. Does this film help you inspire others?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important, because so many of us are out there and we have a little bit of celebrity. I'm not trying to say that I'm the most popular thing in the world, but in my industry at least, and if I broke out of our sport, and spread it out there, it made me even prouder. But I know that the more we can show our vulnerability and be authentic and real, the more that we as athletes or celebrities can inspire and touch people, because everybody's fighting something. Everyone's going through something, or they're going through it with somebody that they love. That's happening with somebody that they love. And you got to know that we're all human, and we're all just still pushing forward, and you can too. And my first thought with cancer was, of course, immediately my children. But after that, I was like, I'm not done. We're going to do something, and we're going to spread the word about ovarian cancer. And I recently became an ambassador for the V Foundation, the Jimmy V Foundation. Was inspired by Dick Vitale. He had a great fundraiser, and I'm like, this is home. This is what I meant to do. This is why I have ovarian cancer, and I'm going to fight like a mule or kick like a mule, and we're going to spread the word. And we're going to represent billiards. We're going to represent Asian Americans. We're going to represent women, and just the warriors out there that show so much courage by just getting out of bed on the days that they can't. I mean, sometimes that's the bravest thing you could do, when it takes everything you've got to get out of bed, and you can choose to be pitied, or you can choose to be inspirational. And I choose to inspire, and I just need to make sure that I don't just sit and wait for something to fall in my lap, but be present, get out of bed, find a purpose, look for it, be available for it, and share your story, because everyone around you, they're watching you and they're seeing how you handle this. And you don't have to handle it, in my opinion, with grace. Things get tough, but you can get through it. And that alone can touch everyone around you. I think that's important.
That is very well said, Jeanette, and very powerful words. Listen, we really thank you for joining us tonight. We just want you to know how proud of you we are, Pool Player Nation. We love you very much. We are happy to hear you are still in the fight. We are going to keep supporting you in that fight, and you let us know if there's anything you need. And, we're looking forward to the new year. I hope you are as well. And maybe, just maybe, we can get you back out to Las Vegas and see you again and interact. I would love that more than anything. So keep that in mind for next year. The invitation is always open. The invitation is always open.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Jeanette, and Merry Christmas to you and your family, and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. You can follow me at Jeanette Lee, the Black Widow, so I'll be putting some more posts up there as well.
All right. Thanks again, Jeanette. Have a great evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, it's really good to see her face, and she looks
great.
She looks
fantastic.
amazing.
She does.
She does.
And her attitude, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, she's right back in her element with this film, and all, you know, you heard Tom at the outset, Tom George, her manager, talking about all the PR they've been doing. I think that has helped her tremendously, because this is the world that she's lived in, and where she feels comfortable, and I'm just happy to see a big smile on her face.
Same. Absolutely.
I just wanted to hug her.
I know.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point of the show tonight. You know, we wanted to give Jeanette a big virtual hug, and this was the best way we could think to do it. So, folks, that about wraps up our show. We were right at about 2 hours, much longer, but there was a lot to unpack there. And so we hope you guys enjoyed tuning in, and hope you enjoyed the film. And, you know, keep wishing good things for Jeanette. And, you know, if you have your own battle, we wish you well there too. And we're going to say goodnight for now, and we'll see you again in the near future. Thanks for tuning in.